Sitting in the dimly lit living room, I clutched a photo of my late husband, Elliot. The silence was only broken by the soft ticking of the grandfather clock, a constant reminder of the time that had slipped away since his passing. Across from me, Helena, my mother-in-law, sat knitting quietly. Her presence always brought a comforting sense of stability. The door swung open, shattering the stillness. Raymond, my new husband, strode in with a grin that stretched ear to ear. "Cora, you won't believe what I've found." His voice was laced with excitement. I looked up, my heart heavy. "What is it, Raymond?" "It's a mansion, Cora. A magnificent mansion. Just imagine us living there. It's only $3 million, a steal for a place like that." His eyes sparkled with a fervor that I hadn't seen before. "A mansion?" My voice was a mere whisper, disbelief coloring my tone. "Raymond, how could we possibly afford that?" He leaned in, his smile widening. "We'll use the insurance money from Elliot. It's perfect." The room seemed to spin. That money was all I had left of Elliot. "But that money, it's meant for my future security," I managed to say, gripping the photo tighter. "Cora, darling, it's just money, and what better way to use it than to secure our luxurious future?" Raymond's dismissiveness struck a nerve. Helena stopped knitting, her gaze sharp. "Raymond, that money was meant for Cora's well-being, not for such extravagance." He dismissed her with a wave of his hand. "Helena, you worry too much. It's a good investment. Cora agrees with me, right?" I felt cornered, his expectant eyes pressing down on me. Memories of Elliot, our dreams and love, seemed to be fading away, overshadowed by Raymond's grand plans. "Raymond, do we really need something so extravagant?" My voice shook, betraying my inner turmoil. "Trust me, Cora. This is our future. A new beginning," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I glanced at the photo in my hands, then at Raymond's eager face, and finally at Helena. Her expression held concern and a hint of disappointment. Doubt crept into my heart, a growing sense that the life I had envisioned with Raymond was slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. I tried to make peace with the decision, but the mansion loomed in my mind like a gilded cage. The following weeks were a blur of Raymond making arrangements. He seemed oblivious to my growing unease and Helena's silent disapproval. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Raymond's daughter, Nora, came into the kitchen. At 17, she carried a rebellious streak that made her hard to connect with. "So we're moving into a mansion, huh?" she said, her tone laced with a sarcasm that I wasn't prepared for. "Yes, it seems so," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Nora leaned against the counter, eyeing me with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "Must be nice, stepping up in the world thanks to someone else's money." Her words stung, and I struggled to maintain my composure. "Nora, it's not like that. It's complicated." "Sure, whatever you say, Cora," she dismissed, grabbing an apple and leaving the room as abruptly as she had entered. That night, Raymond was unusually quiet at dinner. Helena barely spoke, her disapproval of the situation hanging heavily in the air. The tension was palpable. After dinner, Raymond cornered me in the living room. "Cora, we need to talk about the house. There are some papers that need your signature." I tensed. "Papers? What kind of papers?" "Just some formalities for the purchase. You know, since it's your money that's paying for it," he said casually. My heart raced. "Raymond, I'm not comfortable with this. It's all happening so fast." He frowned, his patience wearing thin. "Cora, we've been over this. It's a great opportunity. Don't be so sentimental about the money." "But it's not just the money, Raymond. It's what it represents," I protested, my voice rising. He stepped closer, his expression hardening. "Cora, you're my wife. It's your duty to support my decisions. We're doing this, and that's final." I recoiled from his words. They felt like a betrayal, a stark reminder of how little he respected me or my feelings. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling trapped in a life that was spiraling out of my control. The day we moved into the mansion was surreal. The grandeur of the place couldn't mask the hollow feeling in my heart. Raymond was like a child, gleaming with pride, while Helena's sadness was palpable, her usual warmth replaced by a cold resignation. I was arranging some books in the living room when Raymond strutted in, his demeanor more arrogant than ever. "Cora, now that we're here, there are going to be some changes," he declared, a smug smile playing on his lips. I paused, a sense of dread washing over me. "What kind of changes?" "Well, for starters, I think it's only fitting that you take care of the house," After all, a mansion needs a proper housekeeper, he said, his eyes gleaming with a cruel amusement. I stared at him, disbelief and anger mingling in my chest. You want me to be the housekeeper? In my own home? He laughed, a cold, heartless sound. Your home? No, Cora, this is my house. You're just living in it. And as for being a housekeeper, well, it's not like you have much else to do. I felt a surge of anger. Raymond, I am your wife, not your servant. His expression turned icy. You're whatever I say you are. And right now, I say you're the housekeeper. You should be grateful I'm even allowing you to stay here. Helena, having overheard the conversation, entered the room, her expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. Raymond, you can't be serious. Treating Cora like this, it's inhumane. He turned to Helena, his eyes cold. And you, Helena, I don't even know why you're still here. You're not my family. Frankly, you're just a burden. The words cut through the air like a knife. I could see the pain in Helena's eyes, the insult too much to bear. We were both prisoners in a gilded cage, our dignity stripped away by a man we once trusted. That night, as I lay in bed, the mansion felt more like a tomb. Raymond's true nature had revealed itself, a monster hiding behind a mask of charm. I realized then that I couldn't live like this, not under his control. A plan began to form in my mind, a way to escape this nightmare. Revenge wasn't just a fleeting thought anymore. It was a necessity. The days that followed were a blur of emotional turmoil. Raymond's tyranny over the house grew each day, and his disdain for both Helena and me became more blatant. It was during these dark days that Helena and I found solace in each other's company, plotting our escape from this gilded prison. One evening, as we sat in the dimly lit kitchen, Helena spoke up, her voice steady but filled with resolve. Cora, we can't live like this any longer. We need to leave, to find our own way. I nodded, feeling a spark of hope amidst the despair. I've been thinking the same, Helena, but where would we go? Raymond has control over everything. Helena reached across the table, taking my hand. The insurance money, Cora, we use it to buy a place of our own, a condo, something modest but ours. We leave Raymond and this mansion behind. The idea was daring, almost reckless, but it ignited a fire within me. But the money, it's tied up in this mansion now, I said, the weight of our situation pressing down on me. Helena shook her head. No, my dear, only a portion of it. There's still enough left. We were careful, remember? We can do this. The plan was simple yet bold. We would secretly purchase a condo, a place where we could start anew, free from Raymond's shadow. The thought of taking back control, of reclaiming my life, was exhilarating. Over the next few weeks, we moved cautiously, meeting with real estate agents and lawyers under the guise of mundane errands. Each step we took was a step closer to freedom. The day we signed the papers for the condo was a day of quiet triumph. Raymond, lost in his own egotistical world, remained oblivious to our plans. The night before we were set to leave, I couldn't sleep. The anticipation of a new beginning, mixed with the fear of Raymond's reaction, kept me awake. I knew the confrontation would be inevitable and likely explosive. As dawn broke, I packed my bags, my hands trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. Helena was already waiting for me, her bags packed, her face determined. "We can do this, Cora. It's time," she said, her voice a mix of courage and defiance. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's go. Let's take back our lives." We left the mansion quietly, slipping away into the early morning light. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was ours to shape. Settling into the condo felt like a breath of fresh air. Helena and I reveled in our newfound freedom, the weight of Raymond's oppression lifting from our shoulders. However, I knew this peace would be short-lived once Raymond discovered our absence. It wasn't long before my phone rang, Raymond's name flashing on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I braced myself and answered. "Where the hell are you?" Raymond's voice was a mix of rage and disbelief. "I've left, Raymond. Helena and I both have." "We're not coming back," I said, my voice steady despite the racing of my heart. "You what? You can't just leave. That house, it's in your name, the bills, everything." His voice was frantic, tinged with panic. "That's no longer my concern. I won't be a part of your twisted game any longer," I replied, feeling a surge of empowerment with each word. "You ungrateful. Do you have any idea what you've done? You'll ruin me." Raymond's voice was rising, his words laced with venom. That was never my intention, Raymond, but I refuse to be your prisoner, your housekeeper. I deserve better, and so does Helena, I said firmly. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the gears turning in Raymond's mind. You'll pay for this, Cora. You think you can just walk away? I'll make sure you regret this. I felt a chill at his words, but my resolve was unshaken. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Raymond. Goodbye. With that, I hung up, cutting off his tirades. In the following days, Raymond's attempts to contact me became more desperate. He left voicemails, each more aggressive than the last, demanding that I return and fix the mess I had left behind. But I was done being his victim. Each message he left only strengthened my resolve. Helena and I started to rebuild our lives, our bond stronger than ever. The news eventually came that Raymond was facing financial ruin. The mansion, with its exorbitant costs, had become his undoing. His social standing crumbled as the truth of his behavior, and our departure became known. I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. Raymond had brought this upon himself, yet I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. He was a man undone by his own greed and cruelty. But this was his battle to fight, not mine. Helena and I had chosen a different path, one of freedom and dignity. We had escaped the shadow of the mansion, and in its place, we found light. Life in the condo with Helena was serene, a stark contrast to the turmoil we had left behind. Our days were filled with small joys and newfound freedoms. Yet, the shadow of Raymond still lingered in the back of my mind, an uncomfortable reminder of the past. One evening, as Helena and I enjoyed coffee in our cozy living room, my phone rang. Seeing Raymond's name on the screen again made my heart sink. "Hello, Raymond," I said, steeling myself for another barrage of insults. "Cora, please, you have to help me." Raymond's voice was different this time, tinged with desperation. "Help you? Raymond, after everything, why would I ever—" I started, but he cut me off. "The mansion, it's falling apart. I can't afford the upkeep, the taxes. I'm drowning here. I need you to come back. We can start over," he pleaded. Start over? The audacity of his request left me speechless. The man who had tried to reduce me to a housekeeper now wanted salvation from me. "Raymond, I'm not coming back. You made your bed, now lie in it," I said firmly. "But Cora, I'm nothing without you. You don't understand the mess I'm in. Please." His voice cracked, a far cry from the domineering man I once knew. "Raymond, you chose this path. You chose to treat me and Helena like we were disposable. You can't expect me to fix the consequences of your actions," I replied, my voice unwavering. There was a heavy silence on the line before Raymond spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Cora. I never meant for things to go this far. I miss you." His words, laden with regret, might have once moved me, but now they only served as a reminder of the pain he had caused. "Goodbye, Raymond," I said, hanging up the phone. Helena, who had been listening, reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing, Cora. We have each other, and that's all we need." As I looked around our modest condo, I realized she was right. We had escaped Raymond's clutches and found something far more valuable: peace, independence, and a bond that no amount of money could buy. Raymond's downfall was of his own making, a result of his greed and cruelty. It was a harsh lesson in karma, one that he would have to learn on his own. Helena and I turned our gaze towards the future, one filled with hope and free from the shadows of the past. We had each other, and that was more than enough.
I've always dreamed of a perfect family. Growing up in foster care in Austin, Texas, I felt isolated and alone, yearning for something stable and loving. I envisioned a family where I'd find joy and security, a loving husband, delightful children, and a home filled with warmth. When David, a man I met through mutual friends, proposed to me, I thought my dream was finally coming true. David was 34 years old, 2 years older than me. He had a stable job in logistics, and I, at 32, worked as a marketing manager at a tech company. Our relationship seemed perfect. David was charming, and we both wanted the same things out of life. But after we married, everything started to unravel. The first few months of our marriage were idyllic. However, it didn't take long for David's true colors to show. He became increasingly demanding and lazy. Instead of contributing to our household, he began to boss me around. "Sarah, make dinner now," he'd say as soon as I got home from work. "Alice and Mom are starving." His sister Alice, who was 26 years old, and his mother both lived with us. Neither of them lifted a finger around the house. David eventually quit his job in logistics, claiming that he had a falling out with his boss and needed to focus on his family obligations. This left me to handle everything. I worked hard every day, coming home to cook, clean, and take care of all the household responsibilities. Despite the long hours at my marketing job, I felt like I was working double time, just to keep up with everything David, Alice, and his mother left undone. One day, I received an unexpected visit from David's logistics department manager. He looked exhausted as he shared some troubling news about David. Apparently, David's poor work ethic had caused significant issues. He'd often leave work unfinished and pass on his overtime to timid colleagues. When his manager confronted him, David got angry and accused the management of being heartless. His excuse for leaving work early was always about his family, claiming he needed to tend to his frail mother and sister. The manager informed me that David's behavior was a major problem in the department. He used his family situation as an excuse to avoid his responsibilities, which was causing a lot of stress for his colleagues. They were overburdened and mentally exhausted. Eventually, when David's manager insisted he finish his work properly, David quit on the spot, which led to a lot of trouble for his coworkers. I felt a mix of relief and guilt after hearing this. I knew David wasn't a good worker, but hearing it from his manager made it clearer. I apologized profusely for the trouble David had caused, and the manager assured me that it wasn't my fault. He mentioned that David had quit without even talking to me about his decision. I was already overwhelmed with managing all the household chores and finances alone, while David, Alice, and his mother continued to contribute nothing. David claimed he was working part-time at a local cafe, but his real focus was on his sister Alice's demands. Alice, who had recently turned 26, frequently asked for money from David. With no other sources of income, David handed her what he could. Meanwhile, his mother took money from my wallet without asking, which I discovered when I went to buy groceries. One evening, I met Tom, a 27-year-old barista and student, when he brought a very drunk Alice home. Tom seemed polite and honest. He shared that Alice had lied to him about her job and character, which was unsettling to hear. Over time, Tom and I started talking more, and he became a friend. As things continued to deteriorate at home, David announced he wanted to give his family my savings, which amounted to $50,000, to cover their expenses. He threatened that if I refused, he'd divorce me. I had been saving this money for our future, but David's selfishness was pushing me to my limits. I decided to confront the situation head-on. I had already prepared divorce papers, knowing that David's demands would eventually reach this breaking point. I handed him the papers, and he signed them without hesitation. I left David, Alice, and his mother behind and returned to my foster father's home. He had always been a strong pillar of support for me, and I needed that stability now more than ever. Life at my foster father's house was a mix of relief and uncertainty. I felt safe there, but the weight of my recent decisions and the strain of rebuilding was daunting. I knew that turning my life around would require more than just leaving David. It would involve facing the mess he'd left behind and confronting the people who had contributed to my misery. One day, as I was organizing my things, I received a call from Tom. He had heard about the trouble I'd been through and wanted to check in. He was working as a barista and studying part-time, but he was kind enough to offer a listening ear. When he asked how things were going, I couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration and sadness. I explained how David had handed over $50,000 of our savings to his family and left me in financial ruin. Tom listened intently. "You know, I've seen Alice around," he said, And she's not the sweet girl she pretends to be. She's quite manipulative, and it sounds like David was enabling her. His words resonated with me. David had always made excuses for Alice's behavior, insisting she was in a tough spot. Yet, it became clear that David had been complicit in her demands for money. His job at the cafe barely brought in any income, leaving him with little to contribute. As I was settling into my new routine, my foster father's influence began to show its impact. He had always been well-connected and wealthy, and his support was instrumental in helping me regain my footing. Despite this, the emotional and financial toll of David's actions remained heavy on my shoulders. Then one evening, I had a surprising encounter. I walked into a local bar, a place Tom had recommended, hoping for a change of scenery. To my astonishment, Tom was there, working behind the counter. We exchanged friendly smiles, and he poured me a drink. As we chatted, he shared more about what he had discovered regarding David and his family. Tom revealed that David, Alice, and their mother had taken a lavish overseas trip. The trip was extravagant, filled with gambling and lavish spending, all funded by the money David had taken from me. This revelation was a shock. It was like David had used our savings to escape responsibility and indulge in luxury, leaving me to pick up the pieces. To make matters worse, David attempted to access the remaining funds I had hidden. I had given him a fake passbook to protect my savings, and thankfully, he didn't realize the money was safe from his grasp. Tom helped me confront David over the phone, demanding he repay a bar tab for Alice's drinks. David's financial troubles were worsening, and he was growing increasingly desperate. As the weeks passed, David's situation deteriorated further. Desperate for money, he borrowed from dubious sources, which led him into even deeper debt. To pay off his growing debts, David ended up working on a fishing boat, something far removed from his previous job in logistics. Alice and their mother, who had also racked up significant debts from their gambling spree, were forced to find work to repay their own debts. Meanwhile, my foster father had been closely monitoring the situation. He revealed that he had orchestrated David's financial downfall as a form of protection for me. His connections and resources were used to ensure David faced the consequences of his actions. It was a harsh but necessary step to prevent David from causing more damage. My foster father had advised me to safeguard my belongings, including my jewelry and house, which I did. With David and his family in financial disarray and the threat they once posed diminished, I felt a newfound sense of relief. My foster father's support and Tom's unexpected friendship had been crucial in navigating this tumultuous period. As I adjusted to my new life, the pain of betrayal slowly began to ease. Tom and I grew closer, and I started to see him in a new light. Despite the chaos and heartache I had endured, his kindness and honesty were a breath of fresh air. Our friendship began to blossom into something more, offering a glimpse of hope and happiness amidst the ruins of my past. The financial and emotional strain caused by David's actions had been immense, but with each passing day, I felt more equipped to face the future. I knew that despite the pain, this journey was leading me toward something better. And with Tom by my side and my foster father's unwavering support, I began to believe that a happier chapter was just around the corner. As the weeks turned into months, my life slowly began to stabilize. Returning to my foster father's home was a necessary step, but it was Tom's friendship and support that truly helped me rebuild. Our connection grew deeper, and I found comfort in his company. He was everything David was not: kind, genuine, and supportive. One evening, while we were enjoying a quiet dinner at my foster father's house, I received a call from Tom. He wanted to meet me at the bar where he worked. I agreed, knowing it would be a pleasant diversion from the routine I was getting used to. When I arrived, Tom greeted me with his usual warm smile. We found a quiet corner, away from the hustle of the bar, and started talking. Tom's presence had been a source of comfort, but there was more to discuss. "Sarah," he began, "I wanted to update you on what's been happening with David. I've been keeping an ear out, and it seems he's gotten himself into even more trouble." I listened intently, dreading what I might hear. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Tom explained that David, Alice, and their mother had gone on an extravagant overseas trip, spending recklessly on gambling and luxury. They had used the $50,000 David had taken from our savings, and it had left them deep in debt. They were living a life of excess, while I struggled to recover from their actions. Despite their lavish spending, David had been trying to get to my remaining savings. I had given him a fake passbook to protect the money, but I knew he was desperate. Tom and I had worked together to confront David over the phone, demanding that he repay a bar tab for Alice's drinks. It was a small victory, but it was symbolic of the justice I sought. The situation worsened when David borrowed money from dubious sources, falling deeper into financial trouble. His attempt to cover his debts led him to work on a fishing boat, far from the comfortable life he had once known in logistics. Meanwhile, Alice and their mother were also struggling. They had no choice but to find work to repay the debts they had accumulated during their gambling spree. It was a harsh reality for David and his family, but it felt like a small measure of justice. My foster father had used his influence to ensure that David faced consequences for his actions. The financial downfall wasn't just a punishment, it was a safeguard to ensure that David couldn't come after me or my resources any longer. Tom and I continued to grow closer, and our relationship evolved from friendship into something more profound. I could see a future with him, one that was far removed from the pain and betrayal of my past. His unwavering support and genuine affection helped heal some of the wounds left by David's deceit. One day, as Tom and I were enjoying a quiet afternoon together, my foster father sat us down for a serious conversation. He wanted to discuss the future and how he could continue to support me. His generosity had been immense, and I was grateful for everything he had done. He reminded me to protect my remaining assets and to stay vigilant. His advice was always practical and filled with wisdom. "It's important to stay smart about your finances," he said. "I've seen how people can take advantage when you're vulnerable. Keep your valuables secure and always be cautious about who you trust." His words resonated deeply. The experience with David had taught me the hard way about trust and security. I had to be cautious about my future and the people I allowed into my life. As the months passed, David's situation seemed to stabilize, though it was far from ideal. He continued working on the fishing boat, struggling to make ends meet. Alice and their mother were also working hard to repay their debts. The life they once enjoyed had been replaced with the reality of hard labor and financial strain. Meanwhile, Tom and I were building a new life together. Despite the challenges, we found solace in each other's company. We supported each other through the aftermath of my past and looked forward to a brighter future. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it was being replaced by the promise of something better. My foster father's continued support was invaluable. He had not only helped me through the immediate crisis, but had also been a source of guidance as I navigated this new chapter. With his encouragement and Tom's steadfast presence, I began to believe in the possibility of true happiness. As I looked back on everything that had transpired, I felt a mix of relief and hope. The road to recovery was still ongoing, but I was no longer facing it alone. With Tom by my side and the lessons learned from my experiences, I was ready to embrace the future with optimism. As the weeks continued to pass, life began to take on a new rhythm. Tom and I were becoming inseparable, and our relationship was growing stronger. Each day, I found myself feeling more hopeful about the future. My foster father's support had been crucial, and Tom's companionship was a source of daily joy. One evening, Tom and I were having dinner, when my foster father called me into his study. I knew it was going to be an important conversation, so I felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. When I entered, he was sitting at his desk with a thoughtful expression. "Sarah," he began, "I wanted to talk to you about how things have been going and offer some final advice." He went on to explain that he had been keeping a close eye on David's situation. David and his family had managed to work off some of their debt, but their financial struggles were far from over. They had been living with the consequences of their actions, and it was a harsh lesson they were learning the hard way. Tom and I had done our part to ensure David couldn't reach my savings. David had borrowed money from questionable sources, leading to even more trouble. Eventually, he had taken a job on a fishing boat, while Alice and their mother had found work to start repaying their debts. The extravagant lifestyle they had enjoyed was now a distant memory. My foster father revealed that he had orchestrated much of this to protect me. He had always been clear about the need to safeguard my assets and valuables, and his actions were meant to ensure David wouldn't be able to cause me any more harm. I was grateful for his foresight and support during this turbulent time. "You've been through so much," my foster father said with a reassuring smile. "I want you to know that I'm proud of how you've handled everything. You've grown so much from these experiences." I thanked him, deeply moved by his words. His support had been unwavering, and I knew that without it, my journey would have been far more difficult. The emotional and financial stability he provided was a cornerstone in my recovery. Tom and I continued to grow closer, and it became clear that we were building something meaningful. One day, while we were walking through a park, Tom turned to me with a serious look in his eyes. He took my hand and said, "Sarah, I've been thinking a lot about us. I want you to know that I care about you deeply and want to build a future together." His words filled me with joy. I realized that despite the pain of the past, I had found someone who truly valued me. Our relationship was a beacon of hope and love in my life. In a final twist, Tom's support and my foster father's guidance proved to be pivotal. My foster father had always admired Tom and was supportive of our relationship. His approval meant a lot to both of us. As Tom and I discussed our future, we decided to take things step by step, enjoying each moment and building a life based on trust and mutual respect. Looking back, I could see how much I had learned from this journey. The betrayal and challenges had led me to discover my own strength and resilience. The importance of loyalty and friendship had been reinforced, and I felt more equipped to face whatever came next. The financial troubles caused by David's actions had been substantial. He had misused $50,000 of our savings, and his debts had led him to borrow from dubious sources. His attempts to cover his tracks had only resulted in more hardship for him and his family. Meanwhile, I had safeguarded my remaining money with the fake passbook and ensured that David couldn't access it. With Tom by my side and my foster father's continued support, I was ready to embrace a future filled with hope and possibility. The road to happiness was not without its bumps, but I had learned valuable lessons along the way. My story was one of overcoming adversity and finding true happiness after betrayal. As Tom and I looked toward the future, we knew that our journey together would be filled with new experiences and challenges. But we faced it with a shared sense of purpose and optimism. With the past behind us and a bright future ahead, we were ready to build a life filled with love and joy.
Indolent employees who tinker on their computers be dismissed. To put it mildly, James Smith, the company's 59-year-old new CEO, is incompetent. He needs assistance to make copies because he is so digitally illiterate. Naturally, I believe he's the worst, but so does everyone else. He branded me a lazy thief without even attempting to grasp the nature of my profession as an engineer. James arbitrarily changed the company's policies, which made working there intolerable. I gave up trying to follow him and did as he asked, resigning. He called me nonstop the day after I resigned. It appears that the management system I designed contained a mistake. I handed him a condition in exchange for his command to correct it. Jason Williams, the company's loan system engineer, is 42 years old and in charge of the management system. Being a tiny company, we are never fully staffed. Although we appreciate requests from clients, we are always working overtime due to a staffing shortage. I intended to speak with James about expanding our recruiting in the near future. But the sales department keeps piling work on me as if to obstruct me. Incorporate this choice. The deadline has accelerated, so move quickly. They press their demands without thinking about how much it will cost me. There were a lot of engineers at the company when I started. I was just getting started, copying my seniors, but before I realized it, everyone had left, leaving me alone. Having to do everything by yourself was more taxing than the loneliness of losing coworkers. We were told that the CEO would be replaced at this time. The outgoing CEO, James Smith, a 59-year-old vice president, was leaving his position due to age. "Hello, I'm James Smith, the new CEO," James said as he arrived at our meeting this morning. "Let's put forth a lot of effort to expand this business." Although I was taken off by his patronizing tone, I had hoped that a new CEO would bring in more engineers. I went over to talk to him about it right away. "James, I have something to discuss." "Who are you?" He gave me a wary glance. It was surprising that, despite our infrequent encounters, he had not recognized me after more than a decade of working for the company. "Jason Williams, the engineer, is who I am. Have you overlooked it?" "Technician. Is there such a department even here?" James glanced up, seemingly lost in contemplation, his expression bewildered. The fact that he was really unaware of the engineering department was alarming. "My task has been to create our management system. Do you truly not know who I am?" "I've always focused on sales, so I know nothing about computers." James forgot about me as the VP since he was so busy helping the CEO and traveling. Even though I felt ignored, I continued with my request. "I'm the sole engineer here right now. If this keeps up, efficiency will suffer and the workload will become excessive. Is it possible for us to hire extra employees?" I told James how desperate I was, but he scowled and shook his head. "My former CEO gave me the order to boost earnings. Adding more employees would only drive up labor expenses. But if we hire even one more engineer, we can handle more work." I was rejected, but I was determined not to give up and kept pleading. James, however, waved his hand dismissively, clearly unhappy. "Enough is enough. Since I recently took over, I'm too busy. We'll talk about this later." He clumped back to his office after that. To be fair, he had recently assumed the role of CEO, and he must have felt a great deal of responsibility having been given the firm by his predecessor. I made the decision to wait and come up to him once he had become comfortable. But it soon became apparent that James was incapable of operating a computer or a copier correctly. He summoned me to his office one day and said, "My computer is broken. Make it right." Nothing was touched by me. It simply broke by itself. Make it right. I never even got the chance to question because he insisted it wasn't his fault. There was nothing happening when you pressed keys on the black desktop screen. Observe, I detest computers because of this. They simply snap without prior notice. Okay, let me take a look. I looked for any peripheral problems. I identified the issue in less than a minute. Peering beneath James's feet, I noticed a cable disconnected from the outlet. The electricity must have been mistakenly turned off by kicking it. I showed it to him after picking it up. Look, it was just unplugged. When I plugged it back in, the computer functioned flawlessly and the power came back promptly. When James realized it was his error, his eyes grew wide. "If it's fixed, you can leave this place. Return to your work now." I was kicked out of his office, and as I looked down the corridor at a garbage can, I instantly remembered his face and instinctively kicked it. James was obviously quite technologically illiterate and had no familiarity with computers. How, therefore, did he work and advance in his career? He used to be a salesperson. Since he used outside sales to meet his quotas in his earlier years, he frequently claimed that office labor involving computers belonged on his subordinates' shoulders. James called me over one other day, and it turned out he needed some documents copied. For me, making copies is something you can do quickly on your own. Cease talking. I don't get along with the newest copiers. Simply carry it out. With some reluctance, I took the documents he handed me and stood in front of the copier. I sighed deeply to be called for such insignificant activities, especially during working hours. Mr. VP, why don't you ask someone else? You called me, but why? As I was putting the documents into the copier, I questioned James. He had a red pen tucked behind his ear and was reading a newspaper about racing. Since you appear to be the least busy, nobody spends their entire day typing on a computer except for you. What? I could not disguise my bewilderment at his reply. Developing the company's security software and management system is my responsibility. I was consistently able to make deadlines even with the sales department's outrageous demands. We've stayed clear of client complaints and kept the company's good name because of my efforts. However, it was startling that James, the CEO, didn't comprehend what I'd done. Are the copies done? Indeed, it's finished. You may now proceed. James accepted the original and the copies I had taken from the copier and placed them on his desk, but he didn't even glance at them. Instead, he made a chin gesture. I exited his office after making sure my duty was completed. A coworker I frequently see in the corridor sympathized with me when I told him about James' phoning. The CEO has been forcing other staff members to use computers to handle data and generate copies. Really, a CEO's poor technological skills are a concern. It appeared that everyone knew how incompetent James was, so I wasn't the only one having trouble. We both laughed till we were exhausted. We believed that with a new CEO, things would improve. Yes, this CEO isn't as good as the last one. We joked our way out of there, and I returned to my work. Everyone was aware of James' incapacity and hoped he would be replaced soon, but our desires were unlikely to come true. James exacerbated the situation. Remote work is not necessary. Being a home worker is basically being indolent. Even in the midst of a cyclone, everyone needs to enter. Our organization had previously used remote work amid a large viral outbreak. For a while, I worked from home, and I was surprised at how convenient it was to not have to travel. However, James thought that working from home was a sign of laziness and mandated that everyone report to work every day, no matter what. We were vehemently against this. Why are you giving up your remote job? Some youths are working from home while wearing pajamas, according to what I saw on TV. Such apathy won't be tolerated in our organization. James was attempting to alter corporate policies in light of television programming. The fact that his capricious choices were making our load heavier was intolerable. I have 3 small kids, a childbearing employee then said. I was able to take care of them when they were ill and finish my work because of remote employment. Give the children to somebody else. Invest in a nanny or similar. I don't make enough money to hire a nanny. This infuriated James, who bellowed, "Low pay is due to your lack of ability. Please don't hold me responsible." James modified policies at will and disregarded all employee appeals after that. Everyone distrusted him, myself included, because of his self-serving actions. I started to worry that, in order to protect myself, I might need to quit this company if things went any worse. I began to bring specific things from the office everywhere I went. Though I hope I'd never use them, I had them just in case. I'm struggling to meet deadlines at work today and am experiencing discomfort. I was hoping to wrap up on time and had a lovely Friday, but yesterday, right before I left, a salesperson gave me extra stuff to do. They added, "Make sure the deadline stays the same," to their immediate agreement to a client's request for additional features, leaving me to work late as everyone else went home. Why does this always end up falling on me? Damn it. I have to work overtime on Friday. Even if my working hours increased, I would still receive overtime money, so I complained but refrained from protesting. That was bearable when you considered the additional compensation. My primary motivation for remaining at this firm is their overtime compensation. Friends who are engineers at other businesses complain about having to work from home and not getting paid overtime or being prohibited from working overtime. My firm might still be decent in comparison to them. But with James's recent policy changes, their future was in doubt. The first pay period after James took over as CEO was next week. This was the day I had been waiting for, my reward for working so much extra. When payday finally arrived, pay slips were given out. Excited, I looked up my amount and was taken aback. Why is it lower than it was previously? Glancing around, I noticed workers contentedly debating how they would use their salary. I went straight to the CEO's office because I was upset that my pay stub did not reflect any overtime pay. But before I faced James, I made sure I looked through the things I was carrying. "James, why is there no overtime pay on my slip?" I yelled at him, but he was apathetically reading the newspaper. I took the paper from him because I was irritated by his lack of interest, which caused him to become agitated. "Because you're just slacking off." He reclaimed the newspaper from my grasp. "You stay late every day just to get overtime pay, right?" I was enraged by his ignorance and got goosebumps from his arrogant expression. "Pardon me, but I put in extra hours to make sure that my clients are happy. Our business excels in offering a safe management method. You're working late because you're slow at your job." His derisive chuckle enraged me even more. "Let's say for argument's sake that I'm at fault, but legally, you must pay overtime." I gave a solid pushback, but James only chuckled at me, seemingly unaffected. "What occurs if I fail to compensate a subpar worker? Do you think I'll go to jail?" "Maybe not arrested, but your reputation and the company's will surely suffer." He scowled when he heard this. "So please review my overtime pay immediately." I pounded his desk with my pay stub. If I persisted this far, I figured he would grudgingly comply. I wouldn't mind if they paid me fairly, even though there might be conflict between us. It would be resolved with just remuneration. However, what he said next gave me no hope at all. "There's no money to pay someone who plays around on the company's dime." How come? I was taken aback by his response and left stunned. He did not intend to understand, even though he was putting in extra hours for the benefit of the company. You consider yourself an engineer, but in reality, you're simply a computer geek. Your work may be done by anyone in another department. What? The mechanism of our business is under my control. However, James grimaced as he got up from his chair and gestured toward me. "You are fired, you lazy thief, playing on the computer." I felt all of my feelings for the company disappear at that very instant. My labor seemed like play to him. Who would follow a CEO that doesn't know what his people do for a living or doesn't pay them properly? "I appreciate everything that you have done. Farewell." I nodded to James while picking up my pay stub. "Wait, are you really okay with being fired?" It seems that my cool acceptance surprised him. "I'll stay through the month to complete the handover." I then departed from his office. After that, I took some time to prepare to quit the company where I had worked for more than 10 years and to transfer my responsibilities to reliable colleagues. On my last day, my coworkers gave me a flower and said goodbye, even though they were sad to see me depart. Although it was bittersweet to bid James farewell, I was disappointed not to get paid what was due to me. I felt bad that I hadn't pressed for my overtime compensation. However, my phone started ringing nonstop the day I resigned. I disregarded the unsettling feeling of seeing an unknown number phoning since the morning. But after 10 calls, I gave up and decided to answer just to vent my frustration. "Stop being so persistent." Whoa, don't yell at me. I was surprised to see it was James. James, what do you want? Come to the office right now. He was hurrying me and sounded desperate. Why? I take it that I'm no longer needed there. Just go quickly. According to your coworkers, they require you. It appeared like not only James, but also the other staff members were in a panic. I picked up my luggage and made my way to the office, worried about them. Upon my arrival, I discovered that everyone was engrossed in their laptops and was overloaded with phone calls. Jason, all the staff turned to face me at once as soon as they saw me. Jason, please lend a hand. What took place? I requested them to explain from the beginning after calming them down. The problem surfaced this morning, one day following my resignation. The person I had given the task of handling the handover to attempted to resolve a problem that had arisen in the management system. Important data, such as client information and thorough product records, are stored in the management system. The company would suffer greatly if this information was leaked and utilized improperly. If handled calmly, the issue could have been resolved swiftly, but James's interference made things worse. An error that wasn't addressed in the handbook happened when he attempted to solve it himself, and only I was able to fix it. There was a chance that data would leak if the problem wasn't fixed, which would seriously erode customer confidence. Every employee was manually moving customer data to a different file in order to stop this. James arrived as I was wrapping up my explanation of the circumstances. You're here, I see. I mean, this is beyond anyone else's capabilities. Quickly fix the computer. Asking someone who has resigned for assistance is awkward, but we don't have anyone else to turn to. Jason, please assist us. I paused to consider my options before responding. Then I'll demand compensation for wrongful termination and my unpaid overtime, in response to pleas for assistance from James and the staff. I extended my hand and gave James a fierce look. After firing me, it's convenient to ask for assistance. Given that the firing was your fault, I'm requesting $10,000 in payment. James became visibly agitated and started to perspire. Everyone in the office looked at him. Why should I give you money? He insisted that I was slacking off and that I had been disobeying my responsibilities. I never took a break. We would have gotten complaints if I had been careless. The sales staff in the corner of the room looked aside nervously when I glanced at them. They simply accepted the expectations of the client and gave me all of the job. Even though I managed deliveries for multiple businesses on my own, I never had any complaints. That's how much I valued my work. You made a mistake in terminating me. How come? You got yourself into this predicament due to your lack of engineering comprehension. With all eyes on him, James felt a sense of terror. I'll fix the problem. Please accept the compensation and apologize for calling me lazy. I hoped that with this ultimatum, he would at last give in. If he did, I could assist the staff right away. But sleazy thief. I never stated that. He mocked me with a sly grin. Stop painting me as the villain. I see. So you're still attempting to avoid accountability. His failure to own up to his deeds made me sigh. Unpaid overtime is a legal issue, as I told you. Only if it is accurate. Have any evidence? James gave me a sly little smile. The fact that he believed I was bluffing gave him confidence. However, there was something in my shoe that could destroy that self-assurance. Yes, I had evidence. What? I reached inside my purse for a sound recorder. I brought it to work in case something happened, and kept it in my suit pocket to record right away if necessary when I thought about moving jobs. I did, of course, videotape the exchange I had with James the day he dismissed me. He cocked his head at the voice recorder I showed him. What is that? An outdated mobile phone. This voice recorder is contemporary. With a single button press, conversations can be recorded. I pushed play after turning up the volume. The staff started whispering as James and I continued our talk. James's face became pale as he heard his voice and fixed his gaze on the voice recorder. James remarks, "You are fired. You lazy thief." Close the tape. I could hear the staff whispering to me as I was using the computer. That is very bad. Jason is a very skilled engineer. Using a computer to play games? The CEO reads newspapers about horse racing all day long. They gave James a really disdainful stare. Talking his way out of this was not an option. I chose to exert even more pressure. I pulled a stack of papers out of my backpack and showed James. These are my time card printouts. They make my working hours and overtime quite evident. I'm able to sue you and turn these in to the Labor Standards Office. The office would look into the matter and the business would be closely examined if it turned out that he wasn't paying overtime. This would definitely reveal James's incapacity as a CEO. James was sweating a lot and wasn't sure what to do. Whatever happens to the company, I don't care. Remember that I was fired. I grinned, and the staff gathered around James. James, kindly comply with Jason's requests. Things will only get worse if we don't find a solution to this problem. Under pressure from the staff, James hesitantly mumbled, Fine. Simply wait a little while. He hurried to the local bank and gave me the unpaid overtime and compensation, confirming that the sum was approximately $112,000 in total. I put it in my pocket when James seized my arm. I fulfilled your requests. Now, swiftly fix the system. I got it. I swiftly opened the administration screen after turning on the machine and found the issue. It was quickly fixed by me. The management system was back up in a matter of minutes, and I had a conversation with the worker who was in charge of the transfer. The mistake is easily correctable. Later, I'll email you the instructions. Wonderful. Thank you so much, the staff exclaimed. Jason is just remarkable. In an instant, he fixed what no one else could. Although I'm accustomed to handling these situations, I was a little uncomfortable to get such high compliments. Is Jason really that good? I wonder. He is, of course, the only engineer we have. With their eyes wide and fingers in their mouths, they appeared astonished. Maybe James even came to understand the value of an engineer in the end. But after receiving my pay, I felt that my work here was finished. I'm departing now that my task is done. Kindly stop making calls at all. James gave me a melancholy glance. You are no longer useful to me. Leave now. The worker's expressions hardened as he spat out these comments, gazing at him with bitterness. I spoke something to them before I left. Don't hold your complaints inside. Share them with others. Speaking up is important sometimes. I praised them and departed from the organization. Later on, I was looking for a new career and helping a friend with their work. Seek employment in my 40s. In my 40s, it was difficult to find a new career, but thanks to my friend's connections, I had several opportunities. I was optimistic that the move would go well until I got an unexpected message from an old coworker. Remarkably, following my departure from the company, James was voted out at the shareholders' meeting. The main stockholders were notified about the system issues by someone. They also brought up James's dereliction of duty, the Labor Standards Office's investigation, and a petition signed by every worker calling for his dismissal. Strong disagreement to James's decision to eject me after I settled the dispute was the driving cause for the petition. James was fired as a result of the staff's lack of faith in him. In addition, any executive who backed James was fired. Thus, the management team was essentially replaced. Now, the staff wanted to put me forward for the next success. I was quite aback to learn this from a former coworker. The CEO. Me? Not at all. It is not possible for a former employee to assume that position. I declined right away, but everyone else in the office felt that I was the best person to make the decision. Surprisingly, all of the stockholders thought positively of my efforts to keep the company afloat during the crisis. But I'm only an engineer. The system issue was limited to my area of competence. I am not cut out to be the CEO. Although I was flattered to receive compliments, I graciously turned down the employee's offer. However, the workers begged me to come back to the company the following day when they visited my home. Jason, you made several attempts to discuss upholding the company's policies with James through negotiation. We can only rely on you to be our leader. Please, let's resume our collaboration. Their cries for help nearly won me over. I appreciate you coming here, but I was ready to say no when one of the staff members announced that James had left the organization. This is our opportunity to make the workplace better. Yes, James lost his job. It was because I didn't want to follow James that I took my firing. I could improve the working atmosphere now that he was no longer there and I had the chance to rebuild the business. We'll support you, Jason, so please come back. I agreed and took on the role of CEO, inspired by their zeal and the prospect of starting the business over from scratch. I created a new structure and updated the company's management policies, taking into account the feedback from the staff. I was able to improve the work atmosphere and conditions that had previously caused dissatisfaction by using my expertise as a former employee. The outcome was a far more comfortable workplace than it had been. I have a lot of pressure now that I am the CEO, since I know that my leadership will determine the fate of the staff. That being said, I lead a solid team, and the company succeeds because of its workers. I am not able to make money on my own. I'm appreciative of their confidence and encouragement, and I'm committed to raising our game. After that, there was a significant reorganization, and we advertised job positions to add personnel to departments that were short-staffed. We started interviewing the many experienced individuals who came through the recruitment process. While the CEO, the HR manager came up to me while I was waiting for the last round of interviews. His face was expressionless as he handed me a CV. The moment I saw that, I started giggling. "This is J. James Smith," I uttered. James Smith's name and photo were written on the application. James had applied to return to the organization after being sacked. He ought to have been disqualified in the first screening due to his terrible reputation, but he managed to get through by accident. As soon as I was asked what to do, I gave the command, "Get rid of him." He no longer belonged here, and I'm not sure why he believed he could return to the company he was expelled from. I was hoping he would give up and find work elsewhere. I had just finished my day's interviews and was heading back to the CEO's office when an employee barged in. "It's urgent, Jason. James is attempting to barge in." "How come?" It appeared as though he had returned after being sent away. I went to where he was before things got out of hand. James and a few staff members were fighting when I got to the door. "Permit me to enter. I used to be the CEO." I urged, "Please leave," observing the staff members training to manage him. I intervened by speaking up. "James, please calm down. What prompted you to attend the interview?" "I'd want to resume my duties as CEO even if I was sacked. Though it didn't go well the last time, I'll win back everyone's confidence this time." I smiled sardonically as I looked from employee to employee, taking note of James's commitment. James murmured, "Wait a minute," as he glanced at me in confusion. "Williams, I thought I fired you. Why are you in this place?" Now that he was more at ease, he appeared perplexed by my presence. And Staffer raised his voice on my behalf, obviously irritated. "You're being disrespectful to President Williams." "President Williams?" James looked at me many times, blinking in surprise. After giving him a kind grin, I said, "Yes, I've been reinstated as the new CEO after you." James took a step back, appearing deceived by his old associates. "Are you going to be the CEO again? You ought to abandon that notion." It was unexpectedly thrilling to see the man who had denigrated me seem shocked. "You're not hired, but I wish you success elsewhere." James clung to me, nearly crying, even after I told him to get out of the entrance. "Jason, please help me. I have nowhere to go. I'll work in sales or administration. Simply employ me. Even a copier is above your capabilities. You disturb the workplace and treat people with contempt. Who would employ such a person? Now go." I spoke out and dialed security. "Hold on. I was in error. Please pardon me." James sobbed and pleaded for mercy, but he was let out by security officers. He then attended many interviews but was turned down each time. He now works day jobs to support himself. Despite having some assets as the vice president, his wife took more than half of his assets as alimony and filed for divorce once he was sacked. His savings are therefore almost completely depleted, and he must quickly find a better-paying job to avoid his lifestyle collapsing. Even now, he consistently gets fired for being careless while no one is looking. After he ultimately faced the repercussions of always pushing work onto others, he probably thought, "If only I had worked more seriously, this wouldn't have happened." It's too late to realize his foolishness as he approaches retirement age. However, since beginning the new business, I have performed better and have been successful in opening a branch office. In addition, after moving up from engineering to CEO, business magazines began interviewing me. My reputation grew over time in this way, and we added more business partners. We eventually joined the ranks of huge organizations after seeing the potential for international expansion and ceasing to operate as a small to medium-sized company. I keep putting in a lot of effort for the coworkers who have faith in and followed me.
Hello, lovely people. My name is Kara. This story is about how I got revenge against my financially abusive husband. My situation was tough, and I know that I made a mistake staying in an abusive relationship for so long. However, with some confidence in myself and help from my in-laws, I was able to leave my ex-husband. My husband Liam and I were college sweethearts. We were exactly like those sappy couples you read in romances. I was fresh out of foster care and found my peace in Liam. He was an amazing guy who loved me a lot, and naturally I loved him back even more. We had a beautiful life planned. However, I had no idea that our marriage would become a nightmare. Do you know what's the saddest part of this? Liam's family loved and adored me as well. His mom, Allison, and sister Violet took me in as their own, and from the very beginning, they loved and cared for me more than I could imagine. After having a hard life bouncing around in foster care, Liam and his family were a breath of fresh air. Liam always said, "I love you so much, Kara. I know you have suffered a lot in foster care, but you are safe now. I won't let you be unhappy again. I'll take care of you for the rest of my life." Those were all lies, you know. No, I won't call him a monster. I know people have had way worse husbands than mine. However, Liam wasn't the saint that I always thought him to be. The trouble started pretty much from our wedding planning. I was actually working for my small business, which took off in the first year itself. I was making good money and didn't want to take a job. Liam saw me as lazy and said, "You need to get a job, Kara. Your spending habits are getting out of control. I won't tolerate you being irresponsible with money. I won't support your luxurious lifestyle. But I'm not overspending on anything, Liam. I will have only one wedding. There are some dreams that I need to fulfill. I won't do anything to risk our financial stability. You know nothing about finances, Kara. Foster care doesn't teach those things. When I'm telling you something, you should listen to me. It's time to stop your frivolous habits." It was pretty funny, actually, mostly because I wasn't a spendthrift. Liam and I were already living together and split all the bills. I was never late on my payments. Whatever I spent was from my fun money, and the things I mostly bought were for my business. I knew the value of money since I didn't have any when I was growing up, but somehow Liam refused to accept this. It was Alice who tried to put some sense into him. When he complained to her, she said, "You must be out of your mind, Liam. Kara doesn't buy anything aside from her business. Even if she does, she's using her money." "But Mom, we will get married soon. Couples should share finances and not spend money at their will." "Yes, that's true, but everyone should have some fun money for themselves. She pays for everything equally to you. What she does with the rest is none of your business. Don't become your father, Liam." "What do you mean, Mom? Why would you say that? Dad tried to control me financially. Look where that got him, divorced and away from his children. I never told you anything because I didn't want to spoil your dad's image. You should stop before Kara leaves you, too." After hearing this, Liam did stop pestering me about spending money. I thought that things had finally changed. Liam was back to his normal self and even encouraged me to follow my vision for the wedding. However, I held back because I wanted to respect his wishes as well. So, I settled for a small wedding on his aunt's lawn. I simply wanted to be with Liam and didn't care about anything else. Well, Liam's side lasted only until we got married. After our marriage, he became controlling again. Every month, he sat me down to demand an explanation of how I spent my money. It was humiliating, and I felt like I was being questioned for committing a crime. Yet my stupid self thought he was just looking out for me. It hit the fan when 1 month Liam came home and was instantly pissed. He said, "Why are there parcels in the house again? You have been wasting money, even when I told you not to." "Liam, I only ordered some stuff for my business. You can open them and see. I didn't buy anything for fun." "I don't believe you, Kara. You have proven that you can't be trusted around money. That's it. Hand me your credit card or I'm leaving. There is no way I will watch you spend all our money." We argued about this for a long time. He was adamant about leaving if I didn't give him my credit card. "I need my card for my business supplies, Liam. You can't take it away. I will give you an allowance as I see fit. You can come to me with proof that you need that stuff. Only then will I give you the money." "Liam, please don't do this. I promise I'm not wasting money. It's for my supplies for the month. The parcel is open. See?" No matter what, Liam kept arguing with me. He absolutely refused to listen. When I didn't give him my card, he went to our room and started to pack. I panicked and gave him my card. I loved this man and didn't have a family beyond him. I didn't want to lose him. Money was nothing to me, so I handed over my card. Liam finally calmed down and promised to stay. Soon I realized just how bad my decision was. Liam took full control of my finances. He only gave money to me as he deemed fit. I had to beg him to get business supplies at times. He accused me of trying to extort money and refused my requests a lot of times. This went on for 7 months, and I couldn't do anything. I didn't tell anyone because I thought Liam would leave me. I was scared and alone, but I was slowly reaching the end of my sanity. Things blew up when something horrible happened to his family. That's when his ugliest side was revealed to me. One morning when I was working at home, I got a panicked call from Violet. She told me that Allison had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. We hurried there and talked to the doctors, and they recommended Allison get surgery ASAP. Now, the problem was that neither Violet nor I had the money. She was just a college student, and my credit card was taken away by Leah. I was dumb enough not to remember my credit card information, so we needed Liam to make the payment. I called my husband and desperately tried to reach him. At first, he was ignoring my calls. When he did pick up, his reaction was not what I expected. I said, "Liam, there has been an emergency. I'm at the hospital with Allison. She had a heart attack and needs surgery as soon as possible. You need to send me some money for the surgery. Please hurry." "What is this nonsense, Kara? I know you're lying to me. Stop pranking me for money and using my mom's bait. I am not letting you spend money on useless—" Liam's voice trailed off into accusations. "What the hell is wrong with you? Your mother is in the hospital. This money is for her, not for me. Hell, I would have paid it myself if you didn't take away my credit cards. These are all lies, Kara. You just want to be irresponsible and spend money. I won't let you be wasteful again. Now quit acting and leave me be," he continued, dismissing my pleas. "If you think I'm lying, why don't you come to the hospital and check? You can call Violet and ask her. Please, do anything but send the money ASAP," I implored. "I'm in a meeting. I don't have time for your antics and pranks. Do whatever you want." I'm not sending you any money. Stop disturbing me. I need to work." Liam's voice was firm as he ended the call abruptly, leaving me shocked. I tried to call him back, but his phone was switched off. I even explained to Violet what had happened and told her to call him. However, even she said that his phone was off. Violet was super pissed. She said, "How dare he accuse you of lying? This is just ridiculous. He has switched off his phone entirely. God, how are we supposed to pay for Mom's surgery?" "Don't worry, Violet. I'll figure something out. I won't let anything happen to Allison. I can sell my engagement ring for the money. It will be enough for the surgery," I reassured her. "What? No, you can't do that. I won't let you do that. Just wait. I'll go over to Liam's work and drag him here. That will teach him a lesson," Violet insisted, her frustration evident. No, Violet. We cannot make a scene at his office. His boss is strict about these things. He might get fired if we disrupt his workspace. I don't have any problem pawning my ring. It won't be long, and I won't miss it anyway. Allison is more important now, I reasoned, trying to calm her down. Violet tried to stop me from selling my ring, but I wasn't going to back down. Allison needed the surgery ASAP, and I wasn't going to wait around for my stupid husband to show up. I took my car and quickly went to a pawn shop. I explained the issue and got the owners to buy my engagement ring. They gave me a good price, so I took the deal and then hurried back to pay the hospital the money. The money made everyone move faster for Allison, and she was rushed into surgery. Finally, we were a little relieved. When I and Violet were alone, she cried into my arms because she was scared for her mother. I held her like that until the doctors came and told us that Allison was okay. She was already wide awake from the surgery, about 2 hours after everything was done. When she finally came to her senses, we went to see her. "My God, that was a big mess. I'm so happy I could wake up again. I thought I was going to die," Allison said, expressing her relief. "Don't say that, Allison. Violet is already pretty traumatized from what happened. Let's think of good things now. We are glad you are safe and recovering. You will be up and about in no time," I reassured her. "Thank you, Kara. Where is Liam? I'm not seeing him here. Is he outside? I want to see all my children together," Allison inquired, looking around. "He's not here, Mom," I replied, hesitating to tell her the truth. Before I could think of an excuse, Violet spoke up. "Honestly, I didn't want to worry Allison after she just had a big surgery, but Violet just couldn't keep her anger in. She blew up in a fit of rage and told Allison everything. She said, 'Mom, Liam has just turned into a big idiot. He didn't show up. He is not here. Do you want to know why? Because when Kara called, Liam, he thought that she was lying. That freaking idiot had the audacity to switch off his phone so that Kara couldn't reach him.' What? This is insane. Why did he do this? I don't understand. Kara, please tell me. I asked him for money, Allison. We needed it for your surgery, and he thought I was pranking him to extort money from him. Liam has been holding my credit cards because he thinks I spend too much. What are you talking about? Liam did this to you. Who the hell permitted him to take control of your finances? And how did my surgery happen? You said Liam didn't send you money, Mom. Kara pawned off her engagement ring for money. That's how we paid for your surgery. How else would we do it? It's been 6 hours already, and he hasn't even called us back. We didn't want to risk your health by waiting. After that, me and Violet told Allison the entire story. I didn't leave any details because Allison kept pressuring me for information. I knew that protecting Liam would be stupid at this point. Besides, there was a reason I sold the engagement ring. I also had plans for my wedding ring. I simply didn't tell anyone about it. I wanted to wait for the right time. I wanted Liam to be present. Liam did show up at the hospital after he called Violet in panic. I didn't receive his call, so he called Violet instead, and she was pissed and told him about Allison. I could tell that she was about to tear him a new one when he finally arrived. He looked disheveled and panicked. He came up to me and Violet and said, "Guys, what's going on? Mom had a heart attack? I had no idea. I'm so sorry. How is she? Is she all right? Can I see her? You have some nerve showing up here after everything. How can you still claim you didn't know? Kara called you, and I was right here. Hell, even I called you, but you didn't pick up. I didn't know she was serious. I was at the office, and I just thought that I was pranking you for money. That's what you said, isn't it? Do you believe me now, or do you think I'm still trying to get money out of you? I'm so sorry, Kara. I didn't know. I was just trying to teach you a lesson. I meant no harm. Please believe me. Don't worry, Liam. Allison is fine. I managed to get the money and I got my lesson today. You showed me just what you think about me. I want my credit card back now. And let me tell you this. I'm filing for divorce. I'm done with you. No, oh no, Kara. Please listen to me. Don't do this. Please, you are misunderstanding everything. I'm not like that. Stop it, Liam. You were nothing but a horrible person. Kara had to sell her engagement ring to pay for Mom's surgery. How dare you try to abuse her financially? I'm disgusted with you, and so is Mom. Don't even think about seeing Mom. She doesn't want you near her. Hearing this, Liam broke down in tears. He kept pleading with me and Violet to hear him out. However, nothing he said painted him in a good light. Instead, it showed just how manipulative and abusive he can be. I told Liam that my decision was final. After that, I simply left. Violet was still berating him when I walked away. After I came home, I had a good crying session of my own. Years of love and care went to waste. I wasted all my love on a useless, selfish man. I hated myself and I hated Liam. Violet called me and said that Liam was still at the hospital and crying for 2 hours straight. When the 2 hours were up, Violet told him to leave. By then, I had packed my bags and left for a friend's place. She was aware of everything and gave me a place to stay. Liam called me the next day and pleaded to talk to me. He said, "Kara, please don't throw away our marriage for nothing. We can work this out. Please come home. I will return your cards. You don't need to answer me for anything. I even got you your ring back. Please come home. You can keep the ring, Liam. I don't want to stay married to you. I will send my friend to get my credit card and give her my wedding band. You can keep that as well. I want nothing from you anymore. I have contacted the lawyer and the papers are in order. I'm sorry, Kara. I've already suffered enough. Even Mom and Violet don't want to speak to me. Please don't leave me. I'll be all alone. I have been punished already. I will say this one last time, Liam. Leave me the hell alone. I married you because I loved you. You showed me exactly just how bad you can be. I have heard and seen everything that I needed. You can keep your sorry excuses and abusive ways to yourself. Kara, please just hear me out. I love you. Let's solve this. Don't leave me. Kara, I didn't want to hear any further, so I hung up and blocked his number. I quickly sent him an email saying that we would only talk through lawyers now. I did visit Allison and Violet at the hospital. Allison said, "So you have decided to divorce Liam. Good for you, Kara. I don't want you to degrade yourself by staying in this marriage. My son has become abusive, and I don't know why. I'm apologizing on his behalf. I must have done something wrong to make him act this way." Please don't apologize, Allison. I can't have you taking stress right now. Please take care of yourself. I won't stress if you promise not to cut me and Violet off. You have become a daughter to me. You have saved my life. I will gladly choose you over my worthless son. Same for me, Kara. You are the sister I never had. I would trade you for that abusive idiot of a brother. Please promise you won't stop contacting us. Don't worry, guys. I will never stop contacting you. You guys are still my family. It felt very strange to have so much support from my in-laws. I had no idea how my husband turned out to be such an idiot. No matter what, I was happy to have a family with Allison and Violet, so I decided to stay in touch with them. As the days passed, Liam was disowned by both Allison and Violet. They told him to get therapy and contact them only when he had bettered himself. Still, they were unsure if they wanted a relationship with Liam. Allison was a victim of abuse from her ex-husband, so Liam's behavior was devastating for her. Violet also couldn't tolerate Liam's disrespect towards me. Last I heard, Liam was begging them to talk to him and forgive him. Liam also kept pestering me from different contact numbers. He showed up at my friend's house, made a scene, and made a huge deal about the divorce. I was done with his shenanigans and tried to sue for harassment. He kept begging and pleading with me, even trying to recruit my friend. He was then not so politely told to get lost. Since then, we have been separated for 6 months, and in my state you can get a no-fault divorce if the couple stays separated for 6 months. So the judge granted me a divorce easily. It's just been a few days since everything was finalized. Allison got in touch with Liam and told him to let me go. Her threats made him give in to the divorce. Now Liam is single and apparently moping around, telling everyone how he will wait for me. As for me, I'm happy all by myself and even planning to move out of state since my business doesn't need a fixed location. Moving won't be an issue. If you have any recommendations in mind, you can help. I desperately want to move and start afresh. I won't lie and say that I'm better than ever, but I am confident that my life will get better eventually.
Why are you ignoring me? I've decided not to engage with strangers. I understand. I'll continue living with my in-laws. They completely ignore me. I expected it from my mother-in-law, but I never imagined my father-in-law would treat me this way. There was a reason why the once kind in-laws had changed. It was because of my sister-in-law, who disliked me. With her return, our peaceful life together was completely upended. Don't regret it, okay? You think I'm going to regret this? Think again, jerk. I packed my bags and left my in-laws' house. Sure enough, just 3 days after I left, chaos broke out in their household. I met my husband at my workplace. He was in sales and frequently visited my office. I was his main contact. As we spent more time in meetings and discussions, I grew fond of him. He was a caring and kind man, tall and not necessarily handsome in the conventional sense, but he exuded a charismatic vibe. He was popular, but for some reason, he said he liked me, and we began dating. When we talked, he mentioned growing up in a typical family with parents and a sister. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young and grew up in an orphanage. It was a complex issue for me, but when we started dating, I quickly shared my background with him. He responded, "That must have been tough, but don't worry, I'll always be there for you." Soon after, he proposed. From the beginning, my husband intended our relationship to head towards marriage and quickly introduced me to his parents. During the introduction, I told them about growing up in the orphanage. They listened attentively and reassured me that it wouldn't matter in our marriage. It made me very happy. Besides, they told me that being raised in an orphanage had nothing to do with being their daughter-in-law, which truly made me happy. Only my sister-in-law, being very attached to her brother, seemed taken aback, asking, "You grew up in an orphanage." My husband had to reprimand her. In retrospect, you probably disliked me from our first meeting. I didn't give it much thought at that time, thinking we had just met. Before our marriage, my husband and I discussed moving in with his parents. We seriously considered it, but in the end, I decided not to quit my job. It turns out my husband was set to be transferred soon. I thought about quitting my job to move with him, but my career was going well, and I had just been given direct reports. We discussed it and decided he would move on his own after getting married. I wanted to savor that newlywed feeling for a bit. I even casually thought about visiting my husband during the long weekends for a little vacation. The idea of moving in with the in-laws so soon after marriage was a bit daunting. That my husband probably felt more at ease living with his parents, plus to put his ever-worried mother at ease, he probably wanted us to live together. Having lost my parents at a young age, I had always yearned for a family, so living with them wasn't an entirely unappealing idea. Plus, my in-laws had always treated me kindly, and I had grown fond of them. Balancing work and my duties as a daughter-in-law was challenging, but having a family made me happy and fulfilled. One day, my father-in-law approached me with an unexpected request. This would mark the beginning of the unraveling of our seemingly happy cohabitation. It was a time when my overly anxious mother-in-law, who tended to act domineering towards my father-in-law, was out shopping. I was about to start cleaning on my day off when my father-in-law asked to speak with me. "What's the matter?" I inquired. "Well, I don't want my wife to know, but I'm taking a leave from work," he explained. He elaborated that he had been having problems with his boss and co-workers, and his health had deteriorated to the point where he had no choice but to take a leave. My mother-in-law is a good person, but she's always anxious and a bit neurotic. Living with them, I began to notice her neurotic tendencies and how my father-in-law tiptoed around her to avoid upsetting her. He had always been on the slimmer side, but now that I think about it, he did seem to have lost some weight recently. It would be nice if my mother-in-law was the type to genuinely worry about my father-in-law's weight loss. However, when he had previously taken a sick day due to a cold, she remarked, "A cold all of your colleagues are at executive levels by now. It's because you're always taking days off, claiming bad health or colds. That's why you don't get promoted." Rather than showing concern, she was the kind to give him a hard kick in the pants. He probably tried his best to push through, no matter how poor his health was. However, his condition worsened, and he secretly took multiple sick days to visit the hospital. He was both mentally and physically at his limit with his frequent early departures, tardiness, and absences. There was talk of him possibly taking a temporary leave from work, but my father-in-law didn't want to upset my mother-in-law under any circumstances. If he were to suggest taking a leave of absence, it's obvious that she would explode in anger. Besides, my father-in-law's salary wasn't that great, and he depended on his overtime pay, so taking a leave would mean he'd be making significantly less. If he told my husband, he'd probably end up telling my mother-in-law, so he approached me asking if I could help with the living expenses. If I suggest taking a leave, she might even divorce me, he said. Hearing those words from him felt like a punch to the gut. I deeply appreciated my in-laws who had warmly welcomed me without discriminating against my background of being raised in an institution. Determined to be supportive, I made up my mind to help out during this tough time. "Understood. I'll transfer money into your account every month. Please use it for living expenses. I'm truly sorry. I'll do my best to recover quickly and return to work. Thank you so much," he said. After that, my father-in-law pretended to go to work as usual while I transferred money into his bank account, which he used for living expenses. My mother-in-law, being rather carefree, didn't meticulously check her bank statements or maintain a household ledger, so she never noticed my transfers. Pretending to go to work, he would visit a mental clinic or take walks in the serene mountains. Gradually, his complexion seemed to improve. I thought he might be returning to work soon, but then an unexpected event occurred. After a marital spat, my sister-in-law returned to her parental home. "Ah, there's nothing like being home," she said. "I thought I'd go crazy if I had to stay with that idiot husband of mine. I'll be staying here for a while. Please prepare meals for me too." I was well aware from our first meeting that my sister-in-law didn't like me. During our family's first meeting, my husband was really upset because she was visibly displeased. Throughout the wedding, she maintained a sour expression and even told me point blank, "My brother looks so good, but you? It would have been better if he married someone prettier." She openly looked down on me, raised in an institution, saying it was embarrassing that I didn't have parents to present at the wedding. However, she got married earlier than us and had already moved out, so I thought our interactions would be limited. That's why I thought living with them would be okay. If she had been living at home, I wouldn't have even considered moving in, knowing the daily jibes I would receive. Still, I thought this visit was just temporary due to her marital problems and expected her to leave within a few days. Despite her stern behavior towards my father-in-law, my mother-in-law was never harsh towards me. Even if my sister-in-law had made snide comments, I believed my mother-in-law would have defended me. But I was wrong. One day, when I returned from work, something seemed off about my mother-in-law's behavior. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She seemed distant, not engaging in her usual conversation. When I asked, she responded, "Did you know you've been badmouthing me behind my back?" "What? I've never said anything bad about you. You've always been kind to me, and I'm truly grateful. Why would I badmouth you? You've been playing the good daughter-in-law card all this time, but you've been badmouthing me on the side." "Fine, whatever," she said, leaving the room. In the hallway, my sister-in-law was smirking. "Looks like you've fallen out of favor. Did your true colors show? Being raised in an institution, your background really does show, huh? It's better not to badmouth people you know." "I haven't said anything bad about her." "Oh, the neighbors seem to have heard it. After I returned home after such a long time, they told me that you've been constantly criticizing her." "What? Who are these neighbors?" "Look, it's been a while since I got married and moved out, so I've kind of forgotten the names of the neighbors. I've never said any of those things. Stop making things up." "Oh my, how rude, Mom." "She's calling me a liar and bullying me," she said, entering my mother-in-law's room. After that, my sister-in-law's malicious behavior escalated. She claimed I told her to sleep in the corridor and take the last bath because she's just a lodger. She complained to my mother-in-law about every little thing. Every time, I had to explain that I hadn't said or done any such thing. However, my mother-in-law seemed to be completely taken in by my sister-in-law's words and seemed to be under her influence. My sister-in-law continued her day, making me wonder if she intended to stay indefinitely. With these worries, I headed home with a heavy heart. "I'm home," I said. Previously, my mother-in-law would cheerfully greet me with "Welcome back." Now there was silence. "I'll get dinner ready," I said, stepping into the living room. I was shocked. Normally, my sister-in-law would nag me to prepare dinner quickly, but now my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law were all eating sushi together. Surprised, my sister-in-law said, "Oh, it looks like someone who isn't family is home. You're not thinking of having sushi, are you?" Without even glancing at me, my mother-in-law continued eating while watching TV. "If you wanted sushi, you should have said so." "I rushed home after shopping. No one asked for that," I said. "Hey Mom, Dad, I went out with my friends during the day and got some delicious pudding." "Let's eat together," my sister-in-law said, without paying any mind to me. The three of them started eating the pudding. I was exhausted from work and didn't have the energy to get upset, so I went to my room without eating. The next day, my sister-in-law said she was going out with friends and asked me to drive her to the station. I obviously declined since it was a weekday and I had work. Even if we were headed in the same direction, it would be a completely different route, and she wanted to leave close to noon. There's no way I could take her. "Just take a day off. It's fine. Your cute little sis-in-law just wants a ride. She never had the chance to relax and hang out after she got married, right? Can't you be a bit kinder to her?" My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were murmuring in the background, but I was fed up. I left for work. However, that night, the defining event that made me decide to leave this house took place. I got held up at work and returned home after picking up some groceries, expecting to be berated. It had started raining by the time I left the office, and it was pouring so hard that even getting in and out of the car, I was drenched. I wondered what nasty trick would be played on me tonight, but when I got home, the three of them were eating takeout just like the day before. No greeting, acting as if they didn't even notice my return. But I've grown used to this treatment. I glanced toward the courtyard from the hallway and saw something placed in the center of the garden. Taking a closer look, it was my belongings, a designer bag I bought with my first paycheck, shoes that were my first birthday gift from my husband, and even my computer that I used for work at home, all soaked. As I was in shock, my sister-in-law said with a smirk, "I felt so grossed out having stranger things in the house." I threw them out. Flaunting a designer bag like that, how arrogant of you. Neither of my in-laws said a word about her outrageous behavior. Why didn't you stop her? Have I done something to you? Do you really believe her lies that I've been bad-mouthing you? Bullying her? Aren't you mad at her for what she did? My mother-in-law avoided my gaze, staying silent. Why won't you say anything? I can't talk to strangers. I can't be friendly with someone who's not family. My mother-in-law wouldn't even look at me. My sister-in-law grinned, waiting for my rebuttal. Wait, where's my father-in-law? I'm the one supporting him during his time off. I'm the one helping out with the finances in his house. Sure, I did it out of gratitude, but shouldn't he defend me now? Surely he'd be on my side. Hoping for support, I looked at him, but he walked past me without a word and went into his room. That was the breaking point for me. I see, I've had enough. Oh, aren't you mad? I'm sorry. To be honest, I never liked you from the beginning, you know, being raised in an institution and all. Just don't regret this like I would, loser. I packed my things and prepared to leave immediately. Seeing me in this state, only my father-in-law seemed flustered, since he was the one depending on me financially. Still, he didn't try to stop me or defend me. I was completely done with his apathy. My husband's work assignment was quite far away, but I wanted to leave this house as soon as possible. I quickly got in my car and drove to him. I never once confided in my husband about all this. I doubt my mother-in-law told him about my sister-in-law coming back home. If he had known, he would have contacted me, knowing I don't get along with her. But my husband never mentioned anything about my sister-in-law in his calls or messages. I never felt anything off about my husband's behavior, but perhaps he's being manipulated by her, fed lies about various things. Even now, as I head to him, he might treat me with the same cold attitude as them. My heart was exhausted, feeling so suspicious even towards my husband, whom I trust most. If he's of the same mind and attitude as them, maybe divorce is the only option. That's how deeply distressed I felt when I arrived at his out-of-state apartment. He hadn't returned yet, perhaps busy since it was the end of the month. As I waited, my husband energetically entered the apartment. Maybe having noticed the lights, what if you were coming? You should have told me. I would have come home earlier. What? Surprise? No, just seeing your face. He immediately greeted me with a radiant smile. The relief of seeing him happy to see me, combined with the humiliation from my in-laws' house, made a mixture of emotions flood out, and I broke down crying. What happened? Did I say something wrong? Seriously, what's going on? It seemed my husband had no idea about the treatment I received at his parents' house. I composed myself, knowing I had to clearly explain everything to him, and began to recount everything. How I've been financially assisting his father, who took medical leave without telling his wife, that his sister had returned and was now staying at their parents' home, that she'd been feeding his mother lies about me turning her cold towards me, how they referred to me as an outsider, how they ignored me, left my belongings out in the rain, and ruined them. Through tears and pauses, I told him everything. Finally, I made it clear that I had no intention of ever returning to that house, and that if he couldn't agree with me on this, I'd want a divorce. My husband apologized for being too engrossed in his work and not checking in on me more often, regretting his family's behavior towards me. Of course, he told me I don't have to go back to his parents' house or even speak to them. Even if I ever forgave them, he was adamant about cutting ties with his parents and sister. He also promised not to provide any financial aid to his father anymore. That night, I felt truly relieved. The tension I had been holding melted away, and I had a peaceful sleep by his side. After that, I never returned to my in-laws' house. While commuting from my husband's out-of-state place was not feasible, I had already approached my company about working remotely. Since my sister-in-law and mother-in-law started treating me harshly, my job doesn't necessarily require being in the office, and many of my colleagues and superiors also work remotely. While I had to visit the office a few times a month, several colleagues lived even further away, so switching to remote work wasn't a problem. I hadn't truly experienced married life since moving in with his family and dealing with my sister-in-law's bullying, but now we could finally live like newlyweds. Just as I was setting up my remote workstation, predictably, my sister-in-law contacted me. It turned out the day after I left their house was the day my father-in-law was supposed to get paid. My mother-in-law usually withdraws a certain amount and transfers it to their household account on payday, but this time she couldn't. Until now, I have been supplementing my father-in-law's reduced salary due to his time off. Upon checking their balance, my mother-in-law confronted him, and he confessed that I have been helping them financially. "Hey, why didn't you tell me you were covering the living expenses?" He told me not to, saying he didn't want me to even know, so I kept it a secret. Anyway, we're running out of money for living expenses, and there's no one to cook or do laundry. The room is a mess. As his wife, you need to come back and take care of these things and transfer money quickly. How heartless. I told you, didn't I? I don't regret this. I have no intention of going back to that house or continuing as your maid. Why should I help people who hate me, destroy my belongings, and treat me like this? Aren't you his wife? Without your help, we can't pay the electricity or gas bills. We can't even go shopping. That's why I said it. I'm an outsider, so it's none of my business, right? I hung up, ignoring my sister-in-law's ranting. She and my mother-in-law kept pestering me with calls and messages, but I ignored all of them. Even after my husband returned from work, the persistent calls from them continued. When my husband answered, he told them firmly, "I'll never forgive you for how you treated her, and I'm never sending her back to you. I'm not coming back either. I don't consider you my family anymore. Stay away from my wife, or you'll regret it." Given that my sister-in-law adored her brother and my mother-in-law heavily relied on him, they were probably shocked. A few days later, I received a call from my father-in-law. He said living with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law was becoming unbearable, and he begged me to continue the financial assistance. I'm still grateful for them accepting me, who grew up in an orphanage when they married, but they didn't support me in my time of need, despite all the financial help I provided. I don't owe them anything. Why should I help those who join others in ignoring me? I'll never assist you again. And with that, I ended the call. Later on, my relentless mother-in-law and sister-in-law audaciously showed up at my workplace. Since I was already working remotely and had a bad feeling about them, I'd informed my company about the situation. The security was alerted immediately. Apparently, they caused a scene, demanding that the company force me to send money back home. Upon hearing this, my husband said, "Report them to the police." Colleagues at my company were supportive, saying, "I can't believe you lived with those people. Focus on your remote work with your husband." As for my in-laws, my father-in-law's health deteriorated under the pressure from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and he'd eventually resigned. My sister-in-law tried to return to her husband's family, but he refused to take her back. The small town quickly caught wind of her drama at my workplace. Given the embarrassment, there was an uproar at her in-law's place. The original reason for the fight between my sister-in-law and her husband was her affair. This incident added to their issues, leading to an immediate decision to divorce. Without a home, my in-laws and sister-in-law moved to a cheap apartment, managing to get by on part-time jobs. As for my husband and me, we're finally living peaceful days, feeling mentally and physically fulfilled. Recently, we found out we're expecting a child and are overjoyed. We're looking forward to the day we meet our baby, cherishing our time together.